and welcome to the 39th episode of Total Pod Mode, your weekly gaming podcast. My name is Will, and I also go by whodahfunk, and I'm joined here by my good friend, co-host, and fellow gaming enthusiast, James, aka Mr. Bames.
What's going on, you positively potent pronghorns?
Coming up this episode, we've got our regular games catch-up, followed by a rampantly speculative gaming news section, before we round out the episode with a new mystery game as part of Completionist's Corner.
Ooh.
But before all of that, let's move on to the socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at whodahfunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/whodahfunk. Well, James, it's been a pretty busy week for me. I actually had my birthday this week, as you well know. So I really didn't get around to playing hardly any video games at all, disappointingly. I'm hoping to get around to a lot more of that this weekend, what with an upcoming release that we'll be talking about later.
I wonder what that could be.
But I think for the time being, it's time to hand this one over to you, buddy. Take it away.
No problem, man. So I'll start things off with the quickest update, which is what feels like forever ago now. I just dusted off Dark Souls 1, my second playthrough.
Ah, yes. The old classics.
The old classics. There's not really too much point going into it too much because it was embarrassingly easy with that Black Knight Greatsword that we discussed.
Yeah.
You know, I had 2 bosses of DLC left and then the final boss.
Some of the more difficult bosses as well. So, that definitely says something there in terms of using that sword.
It was ridiculous. It was just so good. I then went back in New Game Plus for a little bit just to pick up a couple of loose achievements, but nothing really new to report there. And similar to with Elden Ring, when I finished my second playthrough of that, I was thinking I'm not quite ready to be done with the Souls-likes, you know. But I didn't want to jump straight into Dark Souls 2 because you and I are probably going to play that at some point.
Yeah,
so
most definitely. That. Still not done with the Souls-likes, given that, maybe a little pre-hint of our Completionist Corner this week is we actually got into another Soul-like as well, but you're champing at the bit for them, are you?
A little bit. I'm just in that sort of zone, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm not going to play Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3, because I did consider Dark Souls 3 as well.
Yeah.
So I went to a game called The Surge, which I don't know if you've heard of The Surge.
I have actually. I've seen quite a bit of gameplay. It does look very fun. But does it hold up in terms of Souls-like? Is it just as good and crunchy as the gameplay makes it seem?
So it isn't bad, but it would probably be much better if I hadn't played it straight after Dark Souls.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Fine. Yeah, that's always going to be a tough comparison.
Yeah. So I had a bit of fun with it. I only played it for a couple of days, really. Got further than I've ever gotten in it before. I have tried to play The Surge once before, and I've tried to play The Surge 2 once before as well.
Sure thing. Oh, I didn't know there was a sequel.
Yeah. And they're both pretty good games, but there's just not quite enough in there to have kept me going for whatever reason.
Fine.
I know the reason I'm stopping this time is because there's an enemy that was annoying me.
Oh, right.
Like
this
a mob
is more
enemy.
Of a rage quit reason, is
No,
it?
no, not rage quit. Just like, it was just, in my opinion, it takes way too many hits to beat, considering where I am in the game. Like,
Sure
I'm
thing.
quite early
Right.
game, and these enemies are... I'm probably doing it wrong. There's probably a really easy way to do it, but because most of the enemies are robots, right?
Right, yeah.
And these particular robots are just obscenely powerful. Like, not powerful, but tanky. I was just like, I don't like this game enough to be asked with this right now. One of those sort of quits, you know?
Yeah.
But the other thing that I've played this week, which I've sort of been holding off playing, it did get fairly slated on release for being a buggy mess.
Oh, dear.
I finally bit the bullet, though, and I bought EA Sports PGA Tour.
Oh, right. Okay. We've talked a little bit about your penchant for golf games on the pod before. Important question. What happens when you knock the golf ball into the crowd?
Yes, I knew you'd ask this.
I need the information, James.
And I am pleased to announce...
Oh my god.
Whilst you can't knock people over, which is a shame, if you do hit them, the ball knocks off them. It doesn't just go through them. Like,
oh, right. So there is
actually
clipping
some
that's
impact.
happening.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. So that's something at least. That's a start.
Yeah, but you do that, but they don't react. They still clap as if it's a good shot.
Oh, that's weird. Because, I mean, you can hit bad shots in golf. Why would they clap regardless?
That's the thing. And they always clap. And your player will always celebrate. Like, even if he's just gotten like a really shitty par, he'll like celebrate as if he's won the tournament.
That's very odd. James, it sounds like we've gone a long way to go until we see Mortal Kombat X-ray style golf ball to the eye socket animations.
A little bit of time before that, but hopefully not too long. It's a step in the right direction at least.
Yeah, I'll take it.
But I am pleased to announce that this game, for me at least, runs pretty well. I've had one crash, which was, I think, those sort of crashes you get sometimes when you menu too quickly.
Oh, fine. Yeah,
it was one of them, not actual gameplay crash, so I was okay with it. It's not perfect. There are definitely issues with it. You can make your putting animation bug out if you do it too quickly, and your guy will just it's not a T-pose, but he's in the start of the putting animation just doing nothing, but then the ball will move, you'll get all the sounds and stuff.
Oh, right.
So you can break it sort of, but it still all works. And as a golf simulator, it's very, very good. It's definitely better than the 2K games that I'd been playing previously.
I take it it's got loads of modern recognizable golf courses and regular golf players as well.
It has.
Is Woods on the roster?
Woods is not on the roster. He signed the 2K deal for 2K23, so he wasn't going to be in this one.
Fine.
And most of the PGA Tour professionals they have are no longer on the PGA Tour. They now play for the Live Tour, which is quite awkward. But it's a stacked roster. They've got the voice of Sir Nick Faldo in the game, doing the intro sort of cutscene.
Cool. So for golf fans, definitely a recognizable figure and a recognizable voice in the game. That sounds cool. Had he featured in previous titles, or was that a new addition for this one?
Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, I haven't done a golf game in 8 years. I don't think. I think 2015 was the last one. I could be wrong on that, but it's definitely a long time ago. But they haven't lost their touch. It's still got all the cool things the old ones had. The power boost on the drive is back, being able to control your spin after you've hit the ball. Good times.
Oh, okay. Yeah, more video gamey stuff.
Yeah, but it's also still maintained quite a realistic simulation feel. Probably not as realistic as the 2K games and the golf club games, but very good. Very happy with it.
What about the character creator? Is there a character creator?
Thank you for reminding me. I'd clearly been putting it to the back of my mind. The character creator is the biggest catastrophe this game has. It's garbage.
Is it really?
Yeah, you can't actually edit your face. It's set faces.
Oh, can't you? Do you just pick faces and then that's it? Right. What about clothes and
hairstyles and clothes are pretty good. They actually have a top knot. Now that I've cut all my hair off, they actually finally put a top knot in the game that works. So they're good times. But yeah, no, it's the character creator is a disgrace. Thank you for reminding me of that. I'd obviously blanked that out because it's so awful. And another thing that probably is a bit of a spoiler, we're going to talk about an excellent character creator later in the show. So we're really giving them the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, this is a breadcrumbs of information up to what we'll actually be playing later on this episode.
Oh my goodness, we're such teasers. But yeah, no, it's a very good time, EA Sports. I look forward to playing it more. But it's just a golf simulator. Not much more to talk about than that, really.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, well, I'm looking forward to hearing about the developments as we work our way towards more violent golf animations to the audience members.
Hell yeah.
Okay, James, as I said, I'm kind of really grasping at straws here for my catch-up, so I think it's time that we hastily move on to the gaming news. So our first article, just over a week ago, a 4chan user claimed to have information on a newly leaked FromSoft title called Spellbound.
4chan, the famously accurate reporting site.
The gossip-mongering, rumour-leaking goddamn warlord.
To be fair, some shit comes out of 4chan, so fair.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of like a real mixed bag there, whether you can sort of trust this, given the majority of 4chan rumours have no source to speak of whatsoever.
Yeah.
However, we can't ignore the fact that it has accurately represented and leaked things in the past,
exactly.
So it's a mixed bag there. So, last week, we gave FromSoft's upcoming title, Armored Core Fires of Rubicon, a quick mention, now with a confirmed release date of the 25th of August, 2023. It was definitely, however, not on my bingo card for this week's gaming news section that we'll be talking about another rumoured FromSoft release. But here we are. It's important to bear in mind that this is a rumour, as I mentioned before, coming from 4chan and obviously doesn't have any confirmed source. However, years ago, information for Elden Ring was leaked in a very similar fashion on the same forum and was of course met with plenty of speculation and skepticism at the time. So, just over a week ago, a 4chan user made a now deleted post on the internet forum that reads, in quotes, From Software's next game after Armored Core 6 will be called Spellbound and is due to be released in Q1 2025. The game might get a short few second long teaser during the Game Awards 2023, but its first proper trailer will be shown in summer 2024. And then it goes on to list a few things about the game, as well as some further play gameplay details. I'll just list out a few of the more interesting ones now. The game has actually been in development since mid-2021. The game has been confirmed to be directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki and will be published by FromSoft as well. There will be no third-party studios publishing the game, so that sounds very promising in terms of achieving Miyazaki's true vision, perhaps.
Raise the sun!
The game will release solely on next-gen consoles and PC, so that's PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X. So that's an interesting one as well. Hopefully we might start to see a bit of a divergence there and a step away from games that are sort of limited somehow to work on previous consoles.
That doesn't surprise me at all if it's coming out in 2025.
We really need to have a cut-off point, don't we?
It should have already been and gone, to be perfectly honest with you.
In my mind, I agree with you there as well. I think that kind of you end up hindering new releases by kind of making sure that they work on the older consoles. So the game is rumoured to be mainly a spin-off of the Souls formula, with this time a much heavier emphasis on magic and spellcasting. The game takes place in a late 18th century, between the 1780s and 1790s, in a European-inspired fictional world, although it is not a spiritual sequel to Bloodborne, and the game apparently has no connections with Bloodborne whatsoever. So we might be looking at a similar setting there, but it looks like Bloodborne 2 is certainly not what this is.
Good. Don't want Bloodborne 2. Just release Bloodborne 1 on PC.
Let's get Bloodborne on PC before we start thinking about Bloodborne 2, yeah?
I need it!
And this one's very juicy. The game has one very large legacy dungeon, which is in the city which the game takes place in, and has an open world outside it. So, rumours of one massive legacy dungeon in the middle. For those who aren't initiated, a legacy dungeon is essentially the larger dungeons of the Dark Souls series. Legacy dungeons were referred to in Elden Ring just to sort of signify the fact that they had a lot of depth to them, a lot of twisting turns, and a larger environment to explore outside of kind of a regular underground dungeon area.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's just going to be one big ass city with an open world outside it. So the open world is the open world and the large legacy dungeon is this big ass city. That is cool. That is really cool.
Do you know what it makes me think of? Attack on Titan, which is a game set around humanity. They are living in like a giant circular city with different layers on it, and they're being attacked by these kind of giant Titan naked human people that are eating them. And essentially outside of the wall is just kind of nature and fields and forest, but with inside humanity is all just walled in where these titans can't get through the city walls.
Right, got ya.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Miyazaki does take a lot of influences from anime culture and things like that. You know, that he's definitely not short of showing love for that in games like Elden Ring with the amounts of references to Berserk. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he takes a little flavour of Attack on Titan for this new Spellbound game. So overall, the game size is actually likely to be smaller than Elden Ring, only slightly, and that's an interesting one as well in terms of just how large will this city be in comparison to the large nature area around it. Will we be spending a lot of time in the city, or will we be just dipping out to the outside?
The answer is yes, if that's the case.
It sounds like
You'll be spending pretty much all the game in the city, yeah. But I imagine it will have like a sewer system underneath it, like FromSoft likes a sewer, right? There'll be all sorts of verticality as well, loads of buildings to explore. Probably with each building could be its own world in inverted commas, you know what I mean?
If you're doing an entire city, there's absolutely scope to have a big varied environment, just as Bloodborne managed to prove. You know, a lot of those even areas there, they were kind of city outskirts, like the fisherman's village and stuff in Bloodborne.
Do you think that this is in any way linked to the story we reported a few weeks ago about that FromSoft developer posting on his LinkedIn that he's working on a new unannounced FromSoft title?
Hey, you're absolutely right.
You know, does that lend credence to this?
I mean, it definitely ties in, doesn't it? I think you're right there. I mean, it certainly lends credence to it for me, at least.
It's an interesting point. Has 4chan done it again? That's what we really want to know.
Hey, it sounds like there's not a completely outside chance that they have.
Yeah, and just looking at this list of stuff, it all sounds legit. Like
It
there's
does, doesn't
nothing
it?
here
Yeah.
that makes me think, oh no, that's nonsense. It all sounds like a From Software produced Miyazaki game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really intrigued around this this comment here that spells can be wielded like weapons and actually have movesets like normal weapons, like a charged heavy, light attacks, maybe even block attacks, light combos and backsteps and dodges and things like that. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to kind of taking the usual sword and shield or whatever your kind of melee weapon style combat and seeing you do quick spell casts instead. I think that could be really cool and a very big change up to how spell casting has worked in the previous FromSoft titles.
Yes. and could be very cool indeed, particularly with the point that I've just seen that apparently they're going to be like trick style weapons like they were in Bloodborne as well. So with magic, you could do some really cool things with the switch weapons combos and all that.
That is the only thing that makes me actually question the validity of this. Is like, okay, they're scratching all the things and saying all the things I want to hear, and then when you drop trick weapons from Bloodborne into this, I'm like, okay, now this is a lie because this is too good to be true.
That's what I was literally just about to say. I'm not going to get any more excited than I am reading this, because this is pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool sounding stuff, at least.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is very much a leak at this point. They have actually put at the bottom of the post that they will provide an update post regarding the game to provide more information as well as a confirmation of identity. I think that this post was actually originally made around 9 days ago at the time of recording. To my knowledge, that information still hasn't come out, which again doesn't necessarily mean either way. I imagine that to leak this sort of stuff, you would risk some sort of legal repercussions from doing this if you were to confirm your identity. So we shall see, but very exciting stuff if it is true.
I guess check out the Game Awards this year to see if there's any sort of mention, I guess, like they're saying this.
I'll wait with bated breath. On to the next article of the day. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom releases today on the Nintendo Switch. That's right, the wait is finally over, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has finally released on the day of this recording. This title is most likely going to prove to be one of Nintendo's best-selling titles on the Nintendo Switch, as the follow-up title to what is widely regarded as a masterpiece in gaming. I'm of course referring to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I can confirm, I do actually have a copy of Tears of the Kingdom in my possession. However, due to a late delivery and the timing of podcast recording, I sadly haven't had a chance to play the game before recording this episode. Rest assured though that I'm going to be putting a lot of my spare time into playing this game over the next week, so I'll be back with a lot more info as part of our catch up next week.
You've committed yourself, no pressure.
Oh.
You'll finish the game by next week, Will. No problem, just it's fine.
Well, given how long it took me to complete Breath of the Wild, I think that is definitely somewhat doubtable. I mean, it'll be interesting to see wherever I've gotten off whatever is, if there is an equivalent to the plateau area in Breath of the Wild. So let's see how we get on, but I cannot wait to get into it. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the copy now, James. I'm excited.
I'm calling it. You're going to stay in the tutorial area and you're going to spend 20 hours building shit.
Just fusing shit together and figuring out what it all does.
Yeah.
It sounds good to me, man.
I think that's what you'll be doing, and that will be your catch-up next week.
So the release of this game has already been met with huge positive critical reception, with Empire giving the game 5 stars and stating that there is an intoxicating sense of possibility to every moment of gameplay, and describing the world as a living, breathing environment coupled with a euphoric, unparalleled sense of freedom.
That sounds cool, doesn't it?
That's a lot of big words there, James. So assuming that this isn't all just promotional bullshit, a living, breathing world, we kind of mentioned before that we saw that thing chopping wood, and we know it was kind of encouraging to see some more stuff like that compared to Breath of the Wild, where it was typically you just stumble across things, and depending on the day or night, they'd be doing different stuff. I want to see a lot more going on like that. Yeah, there wasn't enough interaction in the world. I wouldn't describe it as dead, but it was definitely lacking depth in terms of people doing stuff outside of very pre-programmed routines. It was a very old style of gameplay design compared to what we've gotten used to now with titles like Red Dead that have knocked stuff out the park in terms of making the world feel alive.
Yeah, but it was also more, certainly in my experience, Breath of the Wild, which is obviously a lot less than yours, but you'd go around and you wouldn't see there'd be areas where you just didn't see anything, then there'd be a group of enemies, and then there'd be empty, then a group of enemies. You never saw like even animals just wandering around, apart from like the occasional pack of horses. So it'd be interesting to see if that's what they mean by this. It's improved in that respect, which I imagine it has.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. The Telegraph also gave Tears of the Kingdom 5 stars, going on to say the long-awaited follow-up to the seminal Breath of the Wild is an expected, inventive triumph for Nintendo's famous series. So again, that I think reflects a lot of the speculative conversation we've had around it in terms of the way that you're going to be able to use your various powers, weapons, fusing system, crafting system to kind of combine, solve puzzles, as well as use those things in combat as well. This is honestly torture just talking about
Excited
it like this.
much?
I just want to be sat
I can
there
see
in
you
front of my
squirming
Switch
in your seat. You're like there, like, oh my god, I want to play it.
I'm like spasming with goddamn anticipation about playing this game. And it sounds like many other game reviews from critics have been following suit in terms of giving this game full marks and a 5-star rating. I'm interested to see how the fan reception of this game is though. Although I'll definitely be giving myself some time to make up my own opinion before looking into many more reviews. As I said, it is basically torture for me just hearing people talk about how good this game is, and I'm still yet to give it a go myself. So yes, I'll come back with news next week.
Yeah, and just to make it even a little bit worse for you, every single thing I've seen on Twitter, online, everywhere is like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5,
Glowing.
10 out of 10,
Excellent.
10 out of 10, 1
Good to hear.
9.8.
Whoa, what cost it at that point too? Do you know what it was? It's the durability system. He was this game of the year, but dock point 2 just for the fucking durability system.
Yeah, no, that's legit. Good shout. Yeah, that's fair. That probably needs. Probably, I'd taken a whole point off personally, but
Perfect game except for that.
but no, yeah, it's not something I've been looking forward to, as you well know. But it's nice to hear that it's really good because I know a bunch of people who are excited about it, yourself included. So, man, I'm looking forward to hearing how you get on with it and whether it lives up to the hype.
And moving on to our final article of the week, yet another rumour originating from 4chan.
They're really getting their journalism socks on this week, aren't they?
They're knocking it out of the park this week with the rumours. Whether their legitimacy is confirmed or not is yet to be said. But hey, they are really tantalising with the rumours this time. ID Software, makers of Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake, and Rage games, have stepped in to assist Bethesda Game Studios with their upcoming Starfield project.
Ooh, okay.
So once again, as I mentioned earlier, this rumour has come from another anonymous poster of the 4chan forum, so as always, take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, off the bat, I instantly don't believe this one as much.
So there is a rumour that id Software, as of August 2022, have been working with Bethesda Game Studios in order to improve the combat in Starfield, something that has looked somewhat lackluster and bland in more recent gameplay footage releases. We'll get a chance, apparently, to see the changes for ourselves at the upcoming Starfield Direct Showcase, which was rumoured by Video Games Chronicle editor-in-chief Andy Robinson back in February this year. So James, you briefly mentioned there that you feel like this one is less likely to be true than the rumours around the upcoming FromSoft title. What makes you say that?
To me, it just sounds like because id and Bethesda worked together on Doom 2016 a little bit, right? It just sounds like, oh, those guys have worked together. Starfield combat looks shit in the stuff we've seen.
But also, Rage and Wolfenstein have had recent titles with the Bethesda series as well, so there's definitely a lot of shared blood there.
And that's the thing. Reading on about all the other titles there, I did sort of second guess myself a little bit because it's like, they did work on those ones too, I suppose. It does seem convenient though. That's the only thing.
It seems like low-hanging fruit for a rumour, given this sort of already established connections between the companies.
And also, I don't think they'd be hiding that. I think they'd have said, yeah, we've got ID involved, or id, whatever we're calling them. I think they'd have said, we've got them involved to help with the combat. I think that would have been something you'd market it on rather than something you just have in the background.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Has a whiff. Yeah. It just has a slight whiff of bullshit, but I'm not sure. I am second guessing myself a little bit, considering you've just reeled off those list of games too. But they were, like I say though, id was sort of part of that. It wasn't.
They were the driving force behind those games, as opposed. I mean, id does have a reputation of supporting studios in this sort of capacity before as well. If that helps to tick the barometer over to this could be true anymore. As I'm playing devil's advocate.
And it's working. My scale is wobbling like left to right. I don't know, but I still don't think it's as believable sounding as the FromSoft one. The FromSoft one, maybe I just want that one to be true more. I don't know. That's probably what it is.
You're just more willing to believe the rumour that you want to be true.
That's probably what it is.
Hey man, I can't blame you for that.
I mean, Starfield instantly gets a little bit better in my mind if id are involved in the combat, to be fair. I guess, I'm not mad looking forward to Starfield, but I will probably be getting it early doors because, it's a Bethesda RPG. As I've said many times, I respect that. But if id are working with them, great.
I mean, it sounds like it could only be good news for Starfield if these rumours are true. Having developers with such a strong pedigree for first-person shooters would hopefully drastically improve the look and the feel of gunplay and combat. The rumour on 4chan reads that the combat is in a vastly better state than it was during the Xbox Showcase last year, although I guess we'll have to wait and see until the rumoured Starfield Showcase, whenever that may be.
To be fair as well, if you've got these guys working with Starfield combat, the Doom combat uses a jetpack system, right? And Starfield is a space game.
They have a double jump, I know, but...
it's not quite a jetpack, but it's like a boost forward. If you see what I mean. And I imagine it's like a jetpack that does it.
I mean, it would certainly work well as a jetpack, like almost like a Destiny-style jetpack, kind of like a boost of thrust. Yeah.
Think Boba Fett's jetpack, that sort of deal.
Yeah.
I can see that working really well in the context of Starfield, with all the planetary exploration and things like that. So no, the more I talk myself around to it, maybe I can see this one being true as well. But I think the overriding thing for me is that they'd be leading with the fact that it is doing the combat. They wouldn't be hiding it, and it wouldn't be a rumor.
Seems odd that we haven't heard anything about it until now. I mean, we may have to sort of eat those words when they do make a huge deal out of it at the upcoming Starfield Direct, but the Starfield Showcase rather. Hey, I'll take any more reason to get a little bit more excited for this game because, I've been struggling to find reasons lately. So,
you and me both. Apart from the fact it's Bethesda, you and me both.
Okay, man, I think that rounds off the news section. It's time to move on to Completionist's Corner. Here we go for the Completionist's Corner. Corner. Okay, James, it's time for the big reveal. The game that we've been playing this week is Code Vein.
Anime Souls, baby.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is, I kind of described this when I was explaining it to a friend earlier this week, that it was a mixture between Genshin Impact and Dark Souls, and honestly, after playing it for a few more hours, I still feel like I kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Pretty much.
There is a lot more big animated in this one for sure than Genshin. I think Genshin, they kind of reel it in a little bit, but they have gone all out on the kind of just extremely big-breasted female characters of the game with extremely over-exaggerated breast-swinging jiggle physics as well, which is all more comical than anything else I generally find through the gameplay.
Although I will say the jiggle physics is genuinely really good. It's done really well. It is done really well.
It's yes.
So respect to the devs for that, I suppose.
Over-exaggerated breast physics have been done sublimely, and as we'll get into later on the game, it really just has a lot of revealing clothing in general for mainly the female protagonists. The dudes not so much.
Dude. Exclusively the female protagonists. Yeah. Let's not beat around the bush here.
Yeah, they knew their target demographic for this game, that's for sure.
They certainly did. And funnily enough, I think we're going to make mention of it in a sec, right? But this reminds me a lot of God Eater.
Yes, yeah, you're right to think that, James. We will get into that in just a few moments.
Yeah, because God Eater, believe it or not, Will, bigger, more outrageous titties than Code Vein.
No.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Some
I
of
need
the
to see it
characters.
first. So I've never played God Eater, cards on the table, so that sounds like something, maybe it's on the cards for checking out later.
Well, I've only played God Eater 3, which I briefly brought up on a catch-up many, many moons ago.
Okay, yeah, I do vaguely recall.
The main person you do jobs for in that game, she's hung, let's just say.
She's hung on the chest front.
Tiddies!
Okay, James, before we get any deeper down that rabbit hole, let's kind of crack on with the summary of the game. So, Code Vein is a third-person hack-and-slash dungeon-crawling action role-playing game. That is a mouthful.
Yeah, Jesus. What would the abbreviation of that be?
Developed and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic dystopian setting with a vampiric theme and is reminiscent of the Dark Souls series, as I mentioned before.
Yeah. Vampiric themes, yeah. Kind of true.
It's the blood.
Yeah,
there's lots of organs playing in the theme tunes.
Yeah, basically,
we kind of talked a little about this last night.
Basically, all it's missing is fangs. That's beautiful.
Yeah. You say vampire, I say revenant.
Yeah.
So Code Vein is actually a reboot or kind of an alternate timeline for the God Eater series.
Hence the titties.
Absolutely, yeah. Hence that's the main connection between the two of them, really, let's be honest.
Tiddies.
No, but actually, so this timeline involves where research involving things called oracle cells actually led to the creation of revenants, the vampire-like characters we play as and interact with during the game.
In the not-too-distant future, a mysterious disaster called the Great Collapse has devastated the world as we know it. Towering skyscrapers now collapsed, litter the empty and destroyed streets of a city. The landscape is pierced by large dark spikes jutting out of the ground and through buildings. These spikes are known as the Thorns of Judgment, which sounds really fucking ominous, doesn't it?
It's pretty badass right there.
I'll tell you, that's the name of a metal band right now. The Thorns of Judgment! At the centre of the destruction lies a hidden society of revenants, who are the vampire-type people we've talked about earlier, and this society is called Vein. This final stronghold is where the remaining revenants fight demons and monsters and other big old creatures to survive. These revenants are blessed with gifts of power in exchange for their memories of the past and a thirst for blood, much like vampires. If these revenants let themselves give in to their bloodlust, they become known as one of the Lost, who are monstrous ghouls without any humanity left, who never stop wandering in search of more blood to quench their thirst. Very violent motherfuckers as well.
They
sort of
are,
get all
yeah.
big and bulbous and hench. It's kind of cool.
Full aggro.
The story of this game focuses on the plight of the Revenants and their quest to unlock the mysteries of their past and free themselves from their vampiric nightmare, amongst other things. There's some other stuff
Yeah,
going on.
there's some more there as well. This is an overview.
The other thing to say off the bat, just very, very quickly, because it'll be quite important, this comes from the perspective of Will, never played the game before, and me, having played it before, so kind of knowing what the game's about.
Yeah. James is sitting on quite a few details here, holding them back from me until the game chooses to reveal them to me, which I'm very thankful for. No spoilers, please!
Absolutely none.
So these revenants are actually quite interesting because they essentially don't really have any knowledge of their past. All of their memories have been locked away during the process of being turned into revenants, and they can kind of unlock some of these memories by discovering these special items in the game.
There are some characters who have certain objects on them that help them remember certain things, but outside of that, there really is very little memories of the past, as you say.
So before we get any further into the storyline of the game, I think it's important to start off where the game starts off, which is the character creation.
Arguably one of the most deep character creators out there, I would say.
I would agree with you in certain aspects. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting way of doing it.
Before we played again, I do remember there being a lot more clothing options.
It's kind of like 6 styles, and then you can just adjust just how heavily they're built up. And that usually involves the permutations of things like knee protectors, elbow protectors, straps and cloaks and things like that.
Like chains.
Yeah.
Yeah, like collars and things like that. It's quite well done, to be fair. But I do remember that bit being deeper. But in terms of the faces, the accessories and things like that is unparalleled, in my opinion.
Only in other Bandai Namco games, like Soul Calibur, I believe, and stuff like that. It's clearly sharing that exact same system where they have a list of, I think it's like, is it 8 or 10 accessories? There is a limit to the amount of accessories you can put on your character.
I don't know if it's number of accessories. I think each accessory has a value of 1 to 3, and you have a certain amount of rectangular blocks you can have.
Oh, I see.
I don't know exactly what it is, though, because I had like 3 spaces left, but I couldn't put something on, for example. So it depends on what you're doing.
But the ability to attach various accessories, and by accessories I mean it could be things like bows or lace or extra chains, it could be elbow pads, it could be knee pads, it could be various hat things, it could be a feather sticking out of their hair, all sorts of different objects that you can attach, even just things like sort of puffy balls. You can give them like a little rabbit tail if you wanted.
Yep, you can even put a pumpkin on their head.
All of these objects you can adjust the scale of, as well as the rotation, the position on the body, as well as the colour. So as you can imagine, you kind of start with a base 3D character and you have your outfit, but once you're set with that, you can custom colour anything you want, as well as adding various 3D objects to the character model, which can, as you'd imagine, enable you to create some really, really cool and inventive character custom models.
Yes, such as Sonic the Hedgehog, which we've seen.
We saw Pikachu, which was fantastic. There was a very good Link from Legend of Zelda as well.
I'm pretty sure I've also seen like Chad Squidward.
Oh yeah, I think that
Like
would
Mega
be cool.
Chad Squidward. I think I've seen that on Elden Ring too. It's hilarious.
I saw some amazing Final Fantasy characters
Yes.
on there as well, because one thing we've neglected to talk about is the anime hairstyles in this. They have literally just about every single archetype of anime hairstyle in existence, and it is fantastic.
All the Yu-Gi-Oh ones you want basically are there.
Yeah.
Anything from Pokemon, just everything anime is there. It's great.
As well as being able to colour to various degrees their hair, adjust where the kind of, I'm not sure what it's called, but the kind of the different colour point in the hair, and then you can two-tone it. It's really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, there's a shiny slider too, so you can make their hair really shiny if you want.
Extra shiny hair, yeah.
Extra greasy.
So there is really so much you can do with this.
I think you should tell them what you did with it, man, because what you did with it was really cool.
So I noticed as I was flicking through some of the outfits that actually one of them, after you remove a lot of the permutations like the cloak and some of the straps and things, it actually resembles very closely a sneaking suit from
Pretty
the
much
Metal Gear
identical.
Solid series. Yeah, pretty much identical, except for the slightly chunkier boots that he's wearing. It kind of looks like you're wearing a sneaking suit, but then you had a little trip down to like one of those Camden Marketplace shops and ended up getting yourself a big spiky pair of leather boots as
Yeah.
well.
For our American viewers, Hot Topic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, think Hot Topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, James.
Yeah, anime booties, man. Anime booties.
Talking of anime booties, much like Kojima's Solid Snake.
Excellent segue.
Yeah, they spent quite a bit of time crafting these butt cheeks, I can assure you.
Yeah, they did.
But after I discovered the sneaking suit look, then I very quickly cobbled together a hairstyle as well as something to resemble a bandana made out of a headband and a piece of cloth that kind of had two straps to it. Because you can manipulate things, I combined the two objects to make it look like a bandana.
Really well done.
Yeah,
I've got to say,
it
was
really,
well done.
I'm so happy with it. It's probably my closest to resembling video game character that I've actually bothered to create. So sometimes I genuinely forget that I'm playing Code Vein and I'm just playing Metal Gear Solid chopping up demons.
Exactly. It's Anime Snake.
The clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards.
It's really, really good. I've got to say, really good.
And what about you, James? Your time to lay on to the viewers about your character? I think your character resembles Harley Quinn. In
little
quite
bit.
A way.
There's definitely vibes to that, and the other vibe is like Alexa Bliss when she used to, was a wrestler. She used to do like a gimmick where she was basically like Harley Quinn, and it kind of looks like that. So yeah, my character is because of the playthrough that I'm going to do, I decided that it was best to have a character that was sort of a little bit schizophrenic, a little bit good, a little bit bad, bit of everything. So I've made a waifu. She's sort of, for the most part, quite angelic looking. One of her eyes is bright blue. She's got like a heart tattoo on her face. She's got, white blonde hair with like baby blue highlights and stuff.
And a paragon of goodness looking. Kind of like when you're full good on Fable.
Exactly, like really like going for, the skin colour's about like that, to be fair. That's a pretty good description. It's like sort of that pale sort of glow on it. But then on the other side of her face, she's got a red demon eye. She's got she's got some of the frenzy that's from Code Vein is like seeping into her face on that side. She's got pigtails, right? And her pigtail on that side is black with red highlights instead of blonde with blue highlights.
That's right, yeah.
And on that side of her body, on her back, she's got a sort of devil wing protruding. And the idea was that she's sort of this angelic being that's slowly being corrupted by the world of Code Vein. And in my self-lore, a thing we're going to talk about later, whenever she picks up vestiges, it sort of corrupts her a bit more.
Okay.
That's the sort of game,
yeah.
like that's the sort of subplot that I'm playing by myself that isn't in the game. And her name, I believe, and apologies to our Japanese listeners because I'm going to butcher this, it's the Japanese word apparently according to Google Translate for duality, which I believe was Nigensei.
There we go.
So yeah, I went full roleplay on this, boys.
Yeah, it looks like there's a power struggle between good and dark going on within the character. Yeah. It's very cool.
The internal struggle. And she's hot. Let's just be real. She's hot.
Yeah, she's also super smoking. I gotta say, I'm a little bit jealous of the amount of effort and time that you put into your character, although I am very happy with my Solid Snake character. I really like the fact that you've gone to the degree of going for some additional lore into your character and stuff like that. It really adds a second depth to it.
It does, but it's the advantage of having played the game before, you see.
Yeah.
And I did spend 2 hours making it. Oh dear.
Yeah, no, I think I spent at least a good hour creating my Solid Snake character as well.
Yeah, and I think we're both very proud of our creations, and I think they both look excellent, to be fair. We did a little bit of co-op as part of this.
We did. We dabbled with some co-op.
Seeing them fight together it was so sweet. Like proud very parents.
Speaking of fighting, James, should we talk a little bit about some of the mechanics of this game, the combat and things like that?
These segues are... You had a really great one last week as well. You're just absolutely killing it. Love it. Yes, we should talk about the combat because it's obviously a big part of the game, with it being a Souls-like. So, off the bat, we should probably say that, like a Souls-like, there are many different sort of styles of weapon, and each style of weapon has their different weapon subtypes, if you like. So you might have two-handed swords, for example. You then will have 2 different variants of that will have ever so slightly different movesets and different combinations you can do. It's really cool stuff.
That's right.
And it's worth playing with a lot because different weapon types can be different in useful situations in this game. You get plenty of resources, so there's really no risk at all in upgrading every single weapon you find if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of the different sort of playstyles you can have, my character is essentially going to be using heavy weapons, at least initially. So she's got a big old hammer and a big old axe, whereas Will's character, being Solid Snake, is using the sort of bayonet weapon.
Exactly. I just felt that Solid Snake would probably be most comfortable with a gun in his hands, so we're using the bayonet, which obviously has a mixed melee attack that you can use, and his heavy attack is actually shooting a blast. You can also do a charged heavy attack, which shoots kind of more like a shotgun spray of blasts. And these weapons are powered by a currency in the game called Ichor, which you can actually retrieve from enemies by scoring attacks off them, blocking or dodging their attacks, I believe. Is that right?
And I think getting hit.
Oh, right. Okay.
Weirdly,
So,
but
yeah,
that might be
basically,
focus only. It might be focus only, that.
But anyway, you essentially have to go between using your Ica and using your heavy attacks and then getting back into the loop of going in for some melee attacks to restore it. You've also got like a large Ica restore attack that you can do that you do by holding down the A button. And that, depending on what you're wearing at the time, it has one of 3 different abilities. So for instance, my character, they have a claw that sprouts out of their hand. And when on release, they'll kind of slash the enemy with the claw. And that has a tendency to restore a large amount of Ica as well. So with my character using the bayonet, I tend to stand back firing a lot. And then whenever I get a nice big window, I go in with the claw attack just to restore mine. What about you, James?
My sort of charge attack, I believe they're called, my Ica restoring attack, is basically a giant tail protrudes from my armor with a spike on the end, and I can thrust attack people from quite a distance. Because we'll mention briefly there's 3 sort of special attacks for these Blood Veil charge attacks. Blood Veil being your armor in the game. These are, I forget the exact names, but it's Blade, Claw, and Spear, I think. So mine's a spear because it thrusts, yours is a claw because it's a claw. And then the blade one just basically creates a pit of blades on the floor. They just sort of spike up.
I did experiment with that one a little bit later on today, and I actually had quite a good time with that. Not so much with necessarily the pit of spikes that come out the floor, but it also affects the animation that you do for your backstab attacks as well. So if you are able to do that, you'll often have your weapon come out and do a variation. So with the claw, it's just kind of you pull out the claw and do a big slash. But with the spikes, it's really cool because you kind of impale the enemy from underneath them. It's
and
yeah,
from
it's
within
cool little
as well.
animation. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, because I was playing with my old Code Vein character a little bit earlier on, and mine's got a blade one. So I saw all that. It is actually pretty badass.
And you kind of mentioned jokingly yesterday when we were playing these, like, where does the tail come from, Will? The tail's not there on my anime chick at the beginning. Like, the tail just kind of sprouts out of somewhere.
It certainly does.
Well, James, I don't know. Have you ever actually kind of hung around the start screen for this game? Because you actually are provided with short little clips of what looks like an anime for this game. It's actually like a fully animated cartoon.
Yeah.
And you actually see it burst out of her butt cheeks.
Yeah.
Like, on the... It really does just... I thought that was a joke. It's straight up just kind of
It's from
bursts out
their
of her butt
armor.
cheeks.
Yeah, it's from the armor. And because it's an anime game, about loads of women with big old titties,
They don't have much armor.
they don't have much armor. So where's it going to come from? Their panties, right?
Of course. It's the only bit of armor that they are legally required to wear in terms of getting past the censorship board.
Yeah. For context, one of the characters we're going to meet in this game that can join our party is literally wearing a nightie.
Yes,
Just to give you a sort of the base idea of what we're getting at here.
They all look like they're wearing suspenders or stockings or whatever. It's just outrageous.
The final thing to mention while we're talking about combat, though, is Ica that we've discussed there for Will's gun attack there is also used to power abilities that you can have, basically. Think of it as your mana.
Yes, that's a very good comparison. Yeah.
So we'll probably get a little bit more into the core of the combat in terms of how you get your classes and stuff as we progress in this. Basically, you get these abilities depending on what class you are, and Ica is used to power those abilities as well. So definitely worth your while to be constantly recharging your Ica so that you can constantly be firing off abilities or shooting shots like Will does with his bayonet.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a constant charging up and releasing your attacks type sort of rotation as throughout the combat. It's cool stuff.
And because it's not a 1-for-1 conversion, when you hit an enemy, you get like 2 or 3 back at a time. It's absolutely worth just spamming everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, don't be sat there on a massive Ica stockpile sort of thing, being worried about saving it up. You get it back very quickly. You want to kind of fill up the bar as much as possible and deplete it as quick as possible as well.
Exactly. Constantly using your buffs, constantly using your abilities. It adds so much to the combat doing that.
Yeah, 100%. So, James, I think with some of the more basic gameplay elements out of the way, it's time that we return to the story. So the story begins as our character, Solid Snake / Duality, both revenants, awaken in the ruins of a large city known as Vane. The city is sealed within a ring of red mist, with the sealed-in area called the Jail of the Mists. Our character is led by a girl in white who is called Io to a white vine-like growth called a blood spring. These blood springs appeared shortly after the world was cut off by the red mist. These blood spring plants produce a regular supply of blood beads which revenants consume to sustain themselves and slake their thirst for blood.
Yes, and it's also worth pointing out at this stage that when we've woken up, we've forgotten absolutely everything about who we are, where we've come from, as has Io. We just woke up together and there's no context to anything.
Classic video game amnesia scenario.
Hell yeah. Bringing out all the tropes today.
We should also mention that these blood spring plants or missiles actually act as bonfires in the game. So as you're traveling from point to point, they are your checkpoints, which will, upon resting at them, restore all of your health and mana or ichor. And it also regenerates all of the enemies in the game that you've defeated so far. So there is that trade-off there. You will get all of your health back, but you will have to fight your way through the enemies that you previously defeated.
So far, so Dark Souls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and just to confirm that as well, they also act as your point where you can level up your character, you can change equipment, as well as change your companions in the game, which is another system. So co-op play is heavily encouraged in this game. If you don't play with a buddy, you actually can be assigned a companion instead, which is just one of the other protagonists of the story, and they'll be able to use their various abilities to help you along as well.
Yes. Although you can just ignore them all and play completely solo too.
There is a lot of freedom of choice, and they allow you a lot of agency in this game in terms of how you want to play it. One of the huge things for me, which I really liked, was seeing as I spent so long in the character creator, I really like the fact that you can not only hide your helmet, but you can also hide your armor as well. So you can reduce them to just look like exactly how you made them in the character creator, which is really, really good considering how much time we spent in the character creator, I think. Yeah.
It absolutely
really good
is.
stuff.
The only thing that you can't ever hide is the breathing masks, but that's for lore purposes and it's absolutely fine by me.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, that makes sense, you know?
But we'll get onto that more in just a moment, actually. Across the land, many of these blood spring plants have dried up due to the spread of miasma, which looks like a fog of particles that emanates off of the lost. The demons spawned from those who have succumbed to their bloodlust. Miasma increases the bloodthirst of revenants drastically, basically putting them into a sort of frenzy state, and they therefore need to wear special breathers to avoid inhaling any miasma when they are out in the wasteland, which are the things that I have no problem with being there for lore purposes.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, if they weren't there, you'd be wondering how they were surviving.
Although the many things you can do in this game, you can literally have an outfit that is just you wearing a towel, but you will always be wearing that mask. Code vein, everyone.
Our character learns that society is collapsing due to the dwindling supplies of blood beads caused by a levy and distribution system put in place by a group called Cerberus, who acts as overseers for all of the revenants.
Yes, and like the Mass Effect Cerberus, these guys aren't very nice.
No, they're kind of dicks, and they spend a lot of time making sure that they wrestle blood beads off of people and kind of spread them out at their own will, really.
Yeah, and literally like kill women and children to get beads. It's
They're really not fussy.
not at all.
There's also strict protection in place for the extremely small number of remaining humans within the city, enforced by a group known as the Provisional Government, who are led by a man called Silver. The remaining humans are increasingly under threat from revenants due to the scarce supplies of these blood beads.
Yes, and the reasoning for that is because if there's no blood beads, the revenants will just drink human blood instead.
So starting off our journey, we head to an area called the Ruined City Underground.
Well, you say we head there. We get captured by some of these dicky revenants from Cerberus,
We
don't
do.
we? And they force us into go collecting blood beads for them.
Yeah, so we're kind of inducted into their levy scheme there.
Yeah, although it's a good job they didn't actually see us, reactivating the blood spring, because otherwise they'd really want to keep us around,
Right, yeah, there's something special about us, that's for sure.
Yes, more on that later. So this area, the Ruined City Underground that Will mentioned, is basically your sort of tutorial area, really. There's nothing too much going on here, but it's a very, very good area for you to practice a lot of the mechanics of the game, such as the charge attacks that we mentioned earlier, back attacks, and just general get a feel of your combat, because we're both Souls veterans here, but the timing is a little bit different. So good to warm up on some enemies.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Get used to those animations and the way that the combat flows.
Yeah, and have a practice with some of the different weapon types for those that haven't played the game before. But we sort of get through this area fairly quickly, not too many problems. And we're actually initially accompanied, if you're playing solo, you're initially accompanied by a guy called Oliver Collins. And he gets into a fight with a revenant who's becoming a lost, who's going into frenzy, which actually sort of knocks his mask and breaks it. And at this point, you actually end up leaving him behind, having sort of saved him from this frenzying revenant. And you just you leave him, don't you? He just chills in a cavern for the rest of the
Pretty
game.
much, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we then go through the caverns and we get to the boss fight at the end of the thing. And
Surprise, surprise! Our old friend Oliver Collins.
oh jeez, this
Now
guy,
driven mad by the miasmic bloodlust.
yeah, just surrounded by the corpses of other lost who he's killed. And actually, funnily enough, I think it's also the revenants that captured us. He kills them because he's back up top where we were. I think you can
Right,
see some
right.
of the corpses of the people that captured us.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is first boss fight of the game. Now, Will, what did you think of this boss fight? Did you see it coming first and foremost?
I mean, you are led up to a very big boss arena. It does make it pretty clear there that whatever happening, something big's about to happen. I wasn't quite expecting necessarily a boss fight, but I was definitely expecting the end of the level and a big cutscene.
No, but what I mean by that is, did you expect it to be Oliver Collins?
Oh no, not at all. I think at that stage I was still very much sort of getting into the beginnings of the game, so no, I hadn't really started tying those things together
That's
yet.
fair, yeah. But no, this boss fight basically starts off as you're fighting Oliver Collins, the sort of human, if you like, the human-style revenant. He's got a big old hammer, quite slow swinging, quite easy to telegraph his attacks, really. But then you get him to just above half health, and he fully turns into a Lost, and he becomes this big old sort of hulking. I always think they remind me of sumo wrestlers with gas masks on.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
Big,
yeah,
hulking, sort of quite round, sort of bulbous-looking creature with this gas mask that basically forms its whole face. Still wielding a big fuck-off hammer. But his attacks are slightly quicker. He's got more physical defense and does sort of bigger combos, but still very easily telegraphed attacks, I found. So
Yeah.
both my playthroughs had no issue with this guy. How did you find him?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a tutorial boss in a way, isn't it, really? It's unusual in the sense that you don't die to this one.
Yeah.
Straight well. Provided that you actually play good, you don't die anyway.
You're actually meant to beat him.
Yeah. Very refreshing. No, it was a very straightforward, pretty easy boss fight. This definitely doesn't. It's not one that I'll be, unlike Gascoigne, that I'll be talking about, much later down the line in terms of the game. But a cool introduction into just exactly what happens to the Revenants once they become fully frenzied.
It's like, this is what you'll become, and also
Did you
boss
know
fights.
there's boss fights in this game?
Really hammering home the Souls-like feel.
With multiple stages?
Yeah, oh yeah, different phases. And you even get, when you kill them, it says greater enemy felled or whatever.
Yeah. They're not shy about making it pretty obvious which games have inspired this game, let's say.
Which I have absolutely no problem with whatsoever.
So the player and EO meet another character called Louis Amamiya, who sees the player successfully make contact with the vestige of a Lost without becoming frenzied. The Lost being, I believe, our old friend Oliver Collins, is that right?
Correct, yes. Basically, when we've killed him, the vestige is it's like a sort of blood crystal that contains some of his memories. And for a normal revenant to pick it up, it will spike them in the hand and it will just make them frenzy straight away.
Yeah.
But because we're the protagonist,
we're special.
We can pick up these vestiges. They'll still spike us, but we can then fight with the power of good and basically purify them and absorb the memories.
In touching the vestige, our character acquires the memories of the defeated Lost as well as their blood code. Blood codes are a unique property given to each revenant that grants them their own personal powers.
Yeah, think classes, as we mentioned earlier.
Basically, yeah. And there is a lot of these as well that you can find throughout the game. They're all tucked away, hidden, and you can find various parts that I assume unlocks the greater class.
So basically what happens with it is you'll find a certain vestige that will unlock a class for you, and then you find more vestiges and combine them together and it unlocks the sub powers of the class that you can have, and that's things like a bloodshot, which is like a little magic attack that you can chuck at people. You've got buffs that you can put on.
Pretty powerful free hit combo that I can use as well.
Really powerful weapon combinations too, and they all have a sort of a slight blood splatter animation when you activate them, those moves. It's really cool stuff.
And these are moves again that we mentioned previously that are powered by that Ica currency that you need to regenerate by attacking them regularly. So as well as being able to absorb the memories of the vestiges, we are also able to clear away the infectious miasma, which enables us to explore more of the city known as Vane and continue on our journey to find and reactivate the dried up blood springs.
Yes, which Louis is very keen to do for reasons. But no, so we head back from the boss arena to Louis' home base and we're introduced to his buddy, Yakumo Shinonome, who, along with Louis and the rest of a motley crew, are searching for how to solve the issue of blood beads scarcity, or at least so it seems at this stage. Louis tests our character's blood and reveals that we are a void type, due to our blood code having been damaged somehow.
My code is broken!
Which allows us to use the blood code of whoever shares their blood with us.
Is that also the reason? Or at least I'm speculating that as we're a void type, that's also the reason how we're able to absorb these vestiges.
Interesting thought, Will.
Because it goes into the void.
I'm not saying anything because it's all stuff that will be revealed. But I like how you're thinking. This feels like Death Stranding all over again, but I'm you in this scenario. The group then decides to hunt down the dried up blood springs and follow the flow of veins, connecting them all together in an attempt to find the source of the blood beads. Basically, we all became friends.
Exactly. We got the gang together.
They need us and our special protagonist powers to clear out the miasma so they don't frenzy, and we want to find out who the we are, so why not help them out? They seem like good guys and gals.
So this merry band head on our adventure at first to a place called the Park Ruins within the ruined city centre.
Yes, and at this stage, we have the option of being accompanied by Louis or Yakumo. Louis being a one-handed sort of bit more magic-based user. He's quite all-roundy. Very, very able companion. And Yakumo is...
Big off sword guy.
Yeah, it's my boy Yakumo. I'll say now I main Yakumo when I solo. He's
I've
my
been doing
guy.
the same. I've been doing the same for sure on this.
He's one of my favourite characters in it as well. He's so cool, I think. But we won't gush over him today.
So as we explore the park ruins, fighting our way through various monstrous enemies and reactivating the Bloodspring missiles, therefore reducing the amount of miasma in the area, we finally encounter our second boss of the game, the Butterfly of Delirium. Honestly, the first thing I saw when I thought of this was the massive blooming flower that happens during the Millennia boss fight at the end of Elden Ring. That was my first thought seeing this. A giant sort of glowing flower.
Yeah, I remember you saying, yeah. Yeah, so with this boss fight, we get a little cutscene at the start with a revenant harassing a human. And the butterfly doesn't like this for whatever reason and just fucking comes down out of her cocoon and attacks that revenant, and for some reason we try and save that revenant and then it attacks us. And this fight can be a doozy depending on how lucky you get. Basically it's an RNG fight in a lot of ways.
Yes, and this is a poison type boss as well, so you got to be avoiding any sort of poison build up, spending a lot of your time ducking and diving and avoiding a purple poisonous fog cloud that she emits on various moves. And just in terms of look of this anime, we should mention she looks like it's a blooming flower but with like a very scantily clad lady.
Say how it is, Will. She's completely naked.
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, she's being covered by bits of cocoon.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, they just weren't holding any punches back on this game, were they at all? This isn't the only sexy lady boss of this game. I'll just say that now.
And you haven't even played all the game yet.
I know. I've only played like the first 7 or 8 hours or something like that.
And the only thing I will say is that credit to Bandai Namco, this sexy lady boss didn't have big old titties though.
No,
she was quite modest.
It was a modest one. Physics still very much there.
Yeah, very much so.
But modestly there.
Yeah. But to counteract this, she does have a big old sort of dragon head coming out of like her ass as a tail.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And this thing chomps at you and she can sort of like reverse into you with her ass and it like bites you.
That's right. It's almost it's quite intimidating even when you're actually co-oping this enemy, because you'll have one attacking the front and typically one attacking from behind, but because of the switch up and the ability for the rear to also do attacks, it can kind of make that pretty unpredictable.
Yes, and the other thing with this boss as well is there's a couple of her moves where there's just no tell as to what's coming. So I mean, the problem that we had when we were playing yesterday, wasn't it? She does a combo that can either be a two hit combo or a 3-hit combo, and there's just no telling whether that third hit's going to come. And it's basically a big like circular tail swing that knocks everyone around it. And
that's right.
There's just the amount of times we got hit by that because we just weren't sure whether she was going to do it or not was crazy.
I think that probably the deciding factor whether they're going to do that third hit or not is whether it's likely to hit you or not. I think sometimes the combo just ends short, but then other times, and the nature of the fact that we're both running around, I think sometimes she would pull it out. But yeah, no, honestly, nothing but positive things to say about these boss fights so far. They're very tight. They feel a lot like Dark Souls boss fights. And overall, the gameplay of this game doesn't feel so much like a kind of like it. There's a bit of jank there, but not nearly as much as what I've become accustomed to playing these non-FromSoft Souls-like games. So this one, honestly, really does stand out as pretty tight.
Yeah, there's a little bit of jank, as you say. Like the lock-on camera could be better.
That is quite a bit of my issues so far with the game. I have very small issues, but yes, like that has caused me to die a few times.
Particularly with mobs, actually, where you're switching from enemy to enemy. That's much worse.
That's the issue. Yeah, that is difficult.
Because you can get locked into animations where you're not facing the way that you're facing or locked onto, and it's really bizarre.
That's right.
But I agree, for the most part, the combat is pretty tight. It just has different timing that takes some getting used to when you've been playing Souls before, basically.
For sure. Yeah, there's a learning curve, definitely.
100%, but it's a fun learning curve. And yeah, with this boss, I did first time in my solo run. Yeah, me and Big Yak sorted it out, and we did it. We did it relatively quickly. We did
Yeah, it took a handful of attempts, but a
Yeah.
relatively small handful.
Yeah, compared to one of the bosses we'll come to anyway. But yeah, fun fight. And upon defeating the butterfly, we're presented with another cutscene where we are very nice to that revenant who is being addicted to that human. We give him like 3 or 4 blood beads and then let him run away.
Send him on his way, yeah.
Yeah.
Very generous characters. They're very much establishing your guys as the good guys of the group, aren't you? They're like just the ultimate moral high ground types.
Exactly. Particularly Louis. Louis is like he's the de facto leader of our group. And he's like, he's not a holier than thou good character, but he's just like, he's your pure like lawful good character.
Yeah.
But not in like a pretentious dickhead way, in like a I really admire you sort of way.
Yeah, he's kind of a cool guy.
So after we defeat this boss, we have a bit of a choice. We can go one of 2 directions. We can continue on past the Butterfly of Delirium boss fight room, sort of down a tunnel that we've just unlocked. Or we can head back through the ruined city a little bit and sort of descend into a pit that has a lot of these thorns of judgment sort of poking out of it that you can use as platforms to drop down. And because we were there, basically, to begin with, we went through the tunnel that was opposite the Butterfly of Delirium's boss fight arena. We actually meet that human lady that was being harassed by the Revenants, and we do our good guy thing, and we give her the information of the human sort of he said like
safe zone.
Safe zone. I nearly said
like
encampment, like as if it's like a
I think it kind of it sounds a little bit like it is one like that.
Yeah, but it's not like concentration camp here. It's like it's a refuge.
No. Yeah, it's a refuge. Yeah.
And basically, the catch is they will take humans in, they'll look after them, make sure they don't get any trouble from revenants who are just looking to use and abuse them.
But
they will be expected to donate some blood for the cause.
Just a little bit of blood for the cause.
Yeah, which is it's not a bad deal.
Seems reasonable.
Not a bad deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we walk past her. I think we activate another blood spring plant at this point as well.
We do,
and we head down an elevator and we go sort of around some cliffs, and we end up at the dried up trenches, which, as the name suggests, is a big old dried up trench.
Yeah, it's a very kind of like cavernous area with lots of perilous cliff falls and things like that. As James mentioned, there is a lot of those thorns of judgment spiking through the various pits of environment around us.
Yeah, we use them as bridges and things like that. And we get a whole bunch of new enemies here too, which is quite cool. We get some sort of gargoyle looking things. Both with great swords and great axes to switch it up, and some halberdy ones. Cool stuff. And we also get these little flamey dudes that poke out the ground and shoot fireballs at you.
Yep, that's right. Yes. Yeah, they're kind of wormy slightly.
Yeah. But they have got arms and stuff. Like, they are cool. Cool design.
Cool to see quite such a lot of enemy variation this early on in the game as well. Definitely, I didn't have even half a chance to start feeling bored of fighting the things I was fighting before they'd given me something new to fight, which is... very gratefully received.
So we work our way through these dried up trenches, killing enemies along the way, and one of the missiles is actually in a sort of capsized boat that's sort of now on the cliffs where the
that's right,
where the trenches have dried up. It's quite neat. But we end up going through some more trenches and stuff. We end up in another ominous looking boss arena type room, don't we?
Yeah, big round rooms are not a good sign in this game.
No, nor big square rooms or big rectangular rooms.
Big rooms in general.
You can see them coming. And we have boss fight number 3 here, which is a big old lumbering sort of guy who starts off with twin daggers but eventually gets a big old great axe, and he's called the Insatiable Despot.
Yeah, and this reminded me of kind of a little bit like the Capra Demon from Dark Souls as well. There's
Phase 1,
there is a passing resemblance there.
There is, and in terms of the way I fought it, at least, you won't get the reference. There's a boss in Dark Souls 2 that I don't want to talk about because Will hasn't played the game yet, but that you fight in a similar way to this, in that you just sort of basically run round his legs and just hack his legs and then roll through his legs. And he does have an ability where he can summon in a mob or two to come help him, but these mobs, they die in like 2 or 3 hits, I think.
God, I don't think I even really noticed them. If he did call them
he might not have summoned them for you if you were that quick on him. Like, he sometimes doesn't.
This was probably one of the easier fights that I've encountered so far in the game, obviously excluding the tutorial boss. Lots of nice predictable move patterns. He does hit hard, but by that point you've got quite a few healing items and things, so you can typically kind of you can't tank through the fight, but you can heal through the fight if you need to.
Yeah, and as you say, his moves are quite telegraphed. You can get out of the way quite easily.
This was one of the boss fights that I actually didn't co-op with James, and I actually got to toy around with the companion system a little bit, and I took, what's his name? Giacomo?
What?
Yakimo.
Yeah.
Yakimo into the
Big
fight.
Yak, yeah. He'll never let you down, Big Yak.
Never gonna let you down.
The range of companions you can get by the end of the game is quite cool. That's all I'll say for now. But yeah, this fight, as we all sort of intimated there, one of the more simple boss fights.
Pretty straightforward. His phase 2, he just gets a little bit more aggressive, right? If there was a phase 2? I didn't really notice a huge change up.
He gets a little bit more aggressive, and he combines his two blades together into a great axe.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, that's really it. And I think he does an attack where he hits the ground and some blood sort of snakes at you. And it's really easy to avoid.
I do remember that, yes, it kind of, the blood stuff, it travels along the ground and hits you. Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not very effective, really. But no, so by the sounds of it, we both kicked his ass pretty easily.
Yep, moving swiftly
And
on.
we're then actually treated to a little cheeky cutscene of, well, really, we hear some singing, don't we? We see like a
We
singing
do,
woman, and
yeah.
we go to explore what's going on. And what we see is another lady, another busty lady.
Stacked,
Yes,
obviously.
yeah.
We don't need to mention that at this point. I
Yeah.
feel like it's more like exception to the rule. It's like we encounter this, believe it or not, a very, very flat-chested lady.
Yeah. That's probably how we should do it going forward. to be
Yeah,
fair. But she is sort of kneeling in front of a man holding a big old sword, and she's singing and looking quite happy, really. And this man has got a contraption in his hand that looks kind of like a pineapple with spikes on it.
yeah, like a blue
Yeah.
icy pineapple.
Blue
I'm
icy
going with.
pineapple. And he's clearly used that to kill a revenant in some way. Don't quite know the details just yet. And what he then does is he waits for the lady to finish up with her song and then stabs her in the chest with this pineapple.
Yeah, it's got like, with the spiky leaves of the pineapple.
Yeah, and it's sort of ingested. Whatever's happened to this contraption is ingested by the lady, and us being the good party of people that we are, we're like, you stop it, you prick.
Yep. Bit late at that point. We have just watched her, take a massive pineapple to the chest.
Yeah, that's not a sentence you thought you'd be saying today, is it?
No.
Yeah, and basically we get absolutely no closure on who these guys are or what they're doing. They just disappear into thin air, never to be seen again, question mark?
Very unlikely. But they do leave a pile of ash behind, which is obviously, and much like vampires as well, it's one thing we haven't mentioned in this game. There has been, a couple death scenes at this point in the game. When they do die, the revenants, like vampires, also turn into ash.
Although, of course, revenants can die and come back to life because of their gimmick, which is a boar parasite inside them, brings them back to life.
Right.
It's when the parasite inside them gets killed that they then turn into ash and are never to be seen again.
And this dude, this hunter guy, he's killing these people for real because the parasite lives in their heart. Is that right? And he's
believe
destroying
so,
their
yes.
heart. Yeah. He's killing these guys for real, for real.
Yes. But why? What's his reasons?
He wants all the blood for himself. There can only be one. I mean, there's a good way to solve the blood shortage, isn't it?
I'm saying nothing, my lips are sealed.
Are you liking the way I'm thinking?
Yes, I am. But what does that mean? So at this point, once they've disappeared, we can then backtrack down the pit that I spoke about earlier with the sort of spike bridge that you can descend into. Not forgetting to activate the elevator when you're down there, because God, that would be painful to have to do all that again every time.
Yes, this game has a lot of shortcuts and elevator unlocks and things like that. Again, very similar to Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Also, along our adventure, we meet Mia Karnstein and her constantly near blood frenzy brother, Nicola. Odd choice for a young boy child, Nicola, but we'll move swiftly along.
And where we meet Mia in this area that we've dropped down to is called the Howling Pit, and it's kind of an underground reservoir, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it, but it's more like...
Yeah.
It's somewhere between a sewer and like a boggy, swampy area.
yeah. Much more underground areas.
Yeah, much more underground. It's like different levels of water that have enemies hiding under the water levels and stuff like that. And to traverse through this level, basically, you have to just walk around, killing stuff, lighting torches, lowering and raising water levels at various points to get to where you need to go, finding
It made
keys.
me think a tiny bit of the ground level of Blighttown minus the poison of the lake. But there's like a lot of sort of watery area that you have to navigate through and deal with the fact you're being slowed down by waist-high water levels.
Yeah, that's quite a fair comparison, yeah. And it's got that sort of aesthetic. It's not quite as bleak.
Dark and gloomy.
But it's
for
that
sure.
sort of aesthetic, yeah. And this is an area that I did solo and also co-op with Will. And fighting through this area, we do meet Mia. She's trying to get blood beads for Nicola because he's, as Will said, in a constant state of near frenzy. And we actually ask her if she wants to join us, and she says no. Gonna jam, but thanks anyway.
Too busy looking after her brother at that point.
Exactly.
God, that brother's really getting in the way. Need a plot device to get rid of him so Mia can join the team.
Oh, and yet another brilliant segue by Will. We then, as we're approaching another ominous-looking sort of wide open area, we hear some screaming. It's Mia in anguish screaming, "Nicola!" And we rush to see what's going on. And who do we see standing over a pile of ash with Nicola's hat on it? None other than our good friend, the mysterious hunter, with his pineapple.
That's right. He's finished off Nicola.
He has. And once again, we rush to try and get this motherfucker, and he just disappears into thin air. Never to be seen again, question mark? And at this point, we're sort of trying to comfort Mia a little bit, but then a rumbling under the water. A spike appears, swims around a bit like a shark fin as we're greeted with the sort of standard vampire-esque organ when a boss arrives in the arena. A spear comes out the ground, it impales itself into the ground, and then we meet our second sexy lady boss, the pole dancer.
Pole dancer! Yeah. This game clearly thought, hey, you know, it's been at least 15 minutes since we had some big anime titties on the screen. So, it, here's a pole dancer boss.
Yeah. And literally in her opening cutscene bit, she sort of gesticulates at you. Yeah, just
her hips at you
in.
on the pole. God damn.
Good times.
And a lot of her moveset actually involves spinning around on this goddamn pole as well.
Yeah. Like, if you take away the sort of pervertedness of it, it's actually really well done.
This is, this was a boss fight that gave us quite a bit of challenge on our co-op runs with this. And she has a very good, very heavily varied moveset. Really, this was one of the strongest bosses I've played in a long time. Very good.
Yes, and so she's called the Invading Executioner, but we're probably going to refer to her as Pole Dancer Lady.
Probably just Pole Dancer Lady, yeah.
And
water-based. A lot of water-based attacks.
Lots of water-based attacks. And whereas the Butterfly of Delirium's gimmick was poisoning us, this boss's gimmick was slowing us down, which is one of the reasons why this is one of the harder bosses that we fought in our first sort of play here.
For sure. Not only attacks, not only your dodges, and it will drop you down to a whole new class of slow dodge. So instead of doing your cool quick step, you will suddenly clumsily roll around the floor instead.
Exactly that.
But also your healing.
It's bad. It's really hard to deal with.
And the attack that puts you at most risk of being slowed is one where she spins rapidly around on her pole and kind of coats the whole surrounding area in kind of blobs of water.
Yeah.
And if you take too many hits from those blobs and your resistance isn't high enough, then you'll get slowed pretty damn quickly.
Yeah, literally can happen in about 2 hits.
Absolutely.
If you're not
if
careful.
you don't have high resistance, for sure.
Yeah, and as Will mentioned there, we had a fair few attempts at this one in our kart run. Again, solo, and this isn't a brag, it's just weird, but I did it first time.
I always find these, even on Elden Ring and Souls and stuff, I always find the fights harder on co-op than on single. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's weird how the bosses aggro to you when you're co-oping. I feel like with partners it's a little bit more consistent, a bit more even.
Yeah. You can't do that kind of easily predictable aggro trade
Exactly.
that you can do on Souls, for sure. It's not that easy.
No.
Which is only a good thing because, you know, we've made a mockery out of certain Bloodborne and Dark Souls bosses by doing that.
Looking at you, Maria.
Yeah. Oh, goddamn. I feel bad for Renala. She's not a hard boss anyway.
Oh, God.
But I actually did have a fight with shout out Liam on Elden Ring where she didn't get out a single move in her second stage. She just stood there being staggered repeatedly by sort of overhead. Yeah.
Couple of big swingy weapons just knocking her about. Yeah, geez.
Good shit.
That's what we like to hear. None of that with the Invading Executioner though. And
No.
The thing that got us the most of this was she hits hard.
She does,
like, 2 shots you can be dead.
And she has attacks which straight up do just have 2 parts to the move, where the first one, you're lucky if you survive it. It's a guaranteed death if you don't miss that second part.
Yeah, and she got us good a few times. And as simple as that. It's a very good fight though. It's tough but fair. Some of the things that you think might be bullshit, if you actually look at the animations, it's totally legitimate. The biggest example for me of that is she does a sliding attack where she can sort of slide along the ground up to, I think, 3 times. We never got a 3-timer, I don't think, but
Thank God we didn't get 3 times.
initially you'd think if you're standing behind her and she does it, it shouldn't hit you because you're behind her. But actually, if you look at the animation, she swings her scythe back and knocks it into the ground behind her before she sets off.
Right.
So it makes perfect sense. You can't argue with it. I have done, but you can't. But yeah, really good fight, and the satisfaction when we finally got it was pretty epic, wasn't it, Will?
It was. Yeah, no, that was a nice moment to end it on. And I did progress a little bit further this morning, but that was pretty much at the point where we put it down together as part of our co-op run.
It was. And actually, to be fair, it's pretty much the end of our section for Completionist Corner, really, because after we've defeated the invading executioner, we find Mia again, who's sort of devastated by the fact that Nicola's gone.
Understandably.
Yeah,
It's a little
totally
brother.
understandably, yeah. And to really compound it all, she actually starts to frenzy at this point, I guess just out of sadness, and because she'd given the blood bead that we'd sort of given to her, all of it to Nicola.
That's right.
So she was
Yes.
really thirsty at this point. So we actually then sort of take her back to home base, look after her, and nurse her back to health. And she kind of has a dream while she's with us, and she sees Nicola walking with the hunter sort of across the snowy path. And then she wakes up. And as she's exploring where she is, because she doesn't know where she is at this point, she sees a picture of the snowy area on the side of like our planning board where our map is and things, and gives us this whole spiel about, I will do anything to help you if you can just take me there. And there's this whole touching bit. She joins our party, handshakes all round. We have a third companion, and she actually tells us where we need to go, because as Will mentioned briefly at the start, we're looking for the source of where all these blood springs are coming from, and our search so far had taken us to all these areas we've been, but then we're all pointing back to the city ruins. But we'd explored all of that, right? Well, according to Mia, there's a mechanism inside a statue of a goddess that we'd passed that when activated will lower a secret ladder. So we go back to the park ruins, we find this statue, we lower the secret ladder, climb said secret ladder, and we end up at the Cathedral of the Sacred Blood, which is where we're going to leave our tale for this week.
I'm very much looking forward to continuing our story over the next couple of episodes. I think we'll probably mark this. This could even stretch into a 3-parter there. It's we've had a few 2-parters now for a while, so I think it would be nicer to take a little deeper look into this and give this game the time it warrants.
No, I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on, man. I think it's safe to say you've enjoyed your first outing.
100%. Yes. No, having good time with this game so far.
Let's hope it stays that way.
But with all that said, James, that comes to the end of Completionist Corner and to the end of another episode of Total Pod Mode. Once again, for the people in the back, let's lay out the socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at whodahfunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/whodahfunk. Okay, James, it's time to close off the episode. A very special thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you once again, as always.
Much love to the listening fam.
And we'll see everyone next week. See you later, guys.
Until then, goodbye.